We'll have the roll call followed by the invocation by Deputy Mayor Krause and a moment of silence following that to honor those who lost their lives defending the Capitol. Please call the roll.
Krause,
Here.
Mugrower,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
Heschel,
Here.
Ford,
Here.
Allison Osby,
Here.
Palmieri,
Here.
it's 7.
Deputy Mayor Krause.
As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to the city. May our decisions always be ones that are for the well-being of all whom we govern. And then I'd also like to take a moment of silence to observe the lives lost at the Capitol this past Wednesday in Washington, D.C., followed by the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, the first item that we have on the agenda, thank you everyone, is the public hearing on Resolution 21-01, approved submittal of revised 2020 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. And I will read this twice more. Again, that's public hearing Resolution 2101, approved submittal of revised 2020 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. And the third and final reading, Resolution 2101, approved submittal of revised 2020 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. I have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Ford. And a second by Deputy Mayor Krause. Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Davis, are you here?
Absolutely.
Yes. Would you like to just give a brief summary of what the revision is? It's my understanding that this is like $180 difference.
Yes, HUD gave us an award that turned out to be $180 more than they were supposed to give us. So we have to adjust our number to match the new HUD number by $180. They reduced it. So this is just some paperwork we're catching up with to make sure HUD is satisfied with our action plan. It meets their new number.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, Pam, did we have anyone registered to speak on this item? I overlooked that.
No, we did not.
All right, very good. Can you, any further discussion, or can we call the roll? All right, please call the roll.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Heschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next we have citizen statements to council. Is there anyone registered for citizen statements, Pam?
Jamie O'Brien, 1120 Jefferson Street.
Jamie, are you here with us? Tony, do you see Jamie in the queue?
I am still not seeing any public online. I see a Jim Erdman joined. I'm not sure if that's a citizen or elsewise, but that's the only one I see.
It's the only one I see too.
All right.
This is Jim. No, we're representing Battle on Bago.
Okay. All right. So Jamie O'Brien is not with us. And did you say we have someone else registered?
Not for citizen statements. The next individual is for a council item.
All right, very good. Thank you. Moving on to public comment on specific agenda items then.
Okay. Lou Shear, 19 West 1st Street, Fond du Lac.
Is Lou Shear here?
And they wanted to speak on item number 31. A conditional use permit. But I don't see them.
Well, if it's council's pleasure, if those folks who registered are having technical difficulties and come in a little bit later, do you mind if we interject?
Not at all.
All right, Tony, can you just let us know if that happens?
I will. I just got a message from Fitz that apparently some people actually tried to join the closed session link instead of the public session link.
I see.
So hopefully they will find that they are in the wrong meeting.
Okay, so they very well may come knocking on our door here shortly.
Yes.
All right, well, let's go forward with the consent agenda and give them that accommodation and consideration. Do we have a motion and a second to move into the consent?
So moved.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Krause and Councilmember Peschel. And discussion on consent agenda items. I would like to pull the resolution 21-02, approve the revised investment policy for discussion. Do I need a second on that? No, okay. So can we vote on consent agenda minus 2102?
Krause,
Aye.
Blumerower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Ospey,
Aye.
O'Meary,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, back to 2102, approve revised investment policy. Motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Councilmember
Second.
Ford and Erickson. So the reason I pulled this is it's come to my attention that Long Range Finance deliberated on this over a period of time. And very grateful of the work that they've done on the investment policy. However, it's also come to my attention that Sustainability Advisory Board made recommendations with regard to investment policy that perhaps did not have a full airing in Long Range Finance. At least some of the members indicated there was not a full discussion of those recommendations by SAB. So in consideration of that, and I want to be respectful of the amount of time that the Long Range Finance and also staff put into that, if there would be an opportunity for Long Range Finance and sustainability to get back together. It's my understanding, Mr. Van Gompel, that that you had a conversation with the chair from sustainability today on that.
That is correct.
Okay. So specifically, we do not have in our packet those recommendations by sustainability. So it went to two advisory boards, and we only heard recommendation from one of those and did not see this. So I put forth a motion to lay this over until those two can get back together and bring this back to us.
Second.
Discussion.
Madam Mayor, if
Yes.
I could, Russ and Mr. Van Gompel indicated that he did talk to Ms. Davy, and they had talked about some things. I think Mr. Van Gompel and Ms. Davy thought that they would take it back. Mr. Van Gompel would like to make a suggestion that the SAB consider, and then I think they might be able to bring it forward, because there's just a couple things that Mr. Van Gompel thinks that if they change just a couple items that technically would be in compliance. Russ, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Before he speaks, Councilmember Ford had his hand up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly, I guess, walk through what we saw in long-range finance and what we discussed. Our understanding, what was brought to us was recommendations that we divest from all investments with regarding fossil fuels. We had a pretty in-depth discussion. We discussed that we heard from the finance department that we don't invest directly in fossil fuels, and we make a deliberate point not to do that. We were also discussed the manpower that it would take to understand kind of day to day what's happening with our pooled investment instruments, things that we might be sharing with other municipalities or other larger investment pools, and that we would lack the manpower to really accurately track that on a day to day basis. We also emphasized the importance of sustainability. Emphasize, our desire to personally do all that we can to ensure that we have a sustainable investment strategy, but we were balancing that against the responsibilities that we have to be good financial stewards of the public's money. So we did have a discussion there. Perhaps something was missed. I don't know, but I did want to at the very least report the discussion we had and why we approved the policy as is.
And perhaps Mr. Van Gompel, you can fill in Mr. Ford with the conversation you had with Ms. Davy, that there was perhaps a misunderstanding about what the expectation was.
Certainly. First of all, I think it's important to understand that council understands, if you look at the investment policy, it's on page 47 of your packet, under general objectives, item 1, under A, subsection A, the credit risk. We talk about the limitations that we have, and we have to comply with state statutes, chapter 0.0603. So it's chapter 66.0603. And basically under that statute, the city cannot invest directly into public equities or corporate bonds. We can invest in deposits. We can invest in treasuries. We can invest in, and our primary investments are really, as Councilmember Ford talked about, really centered on mutual funds or funds that are established specifically for local governments. There's one managed by the state of Wisconsin. It's called the Local Government Investment Pool. And there's 2 or 3 other private funds that we participate in where they pool the money together. Whether we invest individually or with these pools, we are still prohibited from investing in public equities and corporate bonds. But we do have the ability from time to time, if necessary, to invest in what's called commercial paper, which is a short-term instrument. It's not a stock or bond. So part of the problem or issue that was before long-range finance is the fact that we don't participate in those stocks and bonds. So that kind of makes it a little bit troublesome. But the way the draft ordinance is from the SAB can be separate from our investment policy. We typically, again, don't invest in that. But if we're investing in funds that are pooled together by municipalities and managed by a third party or managed by the state of Wisconsin, that actual funds can fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. We get a report after the fact, after a month or a quarter, but we don't manage them on a day-to-day basis, which makes kind of managing those investment pools difficult to make sure we're in compliance with any resolution that the board, our city council may want to consider. So I told Miss Davy that if SAB, the Sustainability Advisory Board, wants to move forward with a resolution, that it could really be done independent of the investment policy, but that's a decision for council to make.
Yes, thank you for that update. My concern is that we have two different boards who are making recommendations, and we're seeing one of the board's rationale, but we're not seeing the other. And so I personally don't feel comfortable voting yay or nay when we have not even seen the other recommendations. So it's not the role of the long-range finance to censor out other board recommendations going to council. However, what I do believe here is that there's an opportunity for those boards to come together and under staff guidance, perhaps enhance this. So that's why I won't be able to support this resolution tonight. Councilmember Mugerauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to get some things clear real quick on this, because you're insinuating some pretty good things there, that long range finance somehow censored out another advisory board. Nothing to that effect happened in any shape or form. So who's ever informing you of that is well misinformed and in fact lying to you. SAB made a suggested resolution, or approved a resolution on 10/26. On 12/2, Long Range Finance received a copy of that because we were talking about an investment policy. Now, whether the staff liaison chose to forward that to council for review or to Long Range Finance for review isn't Long Range Finance problem. If the staff liaison didn't forward it to council for their full review and a full airing of their thoughts, Long Range Finance didn't do that. That would be on SAB and their delinquency in getting that to council. Long Range Finance had a good discussion regarding the policy and regarding what SAB was asking of us, or at least suggesting that that the city do. We aired that out. We had the policy as part of our discussion. So I'm not sure what members of Long Range Finance Committee are stating that they didn't have a full understanding of what they were voting on, but it's concerning that if they were not paying attention to a vote, that they came to you instead of coming back at our last meeting, which was last week, and had a further discussion of reconsideration. That's what should have occurred.
But it's not in our packet tonight.
Mayor, I still have the floor, Madam Mayor. You speak a lot. If you could let everybody else speak just a little bit. So you'd have to go back to SAB's. It's in their monthly packet that we get updated on. City Manager Roloff provides a weekly newsletter that the boards and commission meeting minutes are included. And so council would have had an opportunity to review those things. So I think it's very concerning to suggest that something's being done that's nefarious, or that we're somehow skipping a step here, that SAB is being silenced by another committee.
Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. I guess I'd like to step back a little bit as the representative of the Sustainability Advisory Board for the council, and kind of explain that there were kind of two actions that took place here. And I instigated some of those actions, to be honest with you. So I think it was at the November meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board where the board, this SAB, was discussing the passage of this divestments resolution, where I indicated that it might be good to forward that along to Mr. Van Gompel, which I did, which is how it made it to essentially made it to the Long Range Finance Committee in the first place, of which, you know, at that point, I think there was a breakdown of communication of what was expected from that resolution as it related to long range finance. I don't know that someone from long range finance or Russ Van Gompel reached out to someone on the sustainability advisory board to discuss that. And so, yes, long range finance had a discussion on it. That was prior to the passage of that resolution on the by the SAB. When the SAB passed the resolution, they asked specifically for, in the resolution, for the Long Range Finance Committee to take it up and to bring back and to look for it to be included in the investment policy. That was prior, that was after, that was in the December meeting after the Long Range Finance Committee had already met, that had been passed. So, so that's one step here. And so the SAB thought, the SAB received a memo from Mr. Van Gompel for the January meeting, of which where it discussed that it was not going to be involved in it, of which the committee felt like they had been ignored in the sense that they had specifically asked for it to be included and to be discussed further. So that brings us up to January. At the SAB meeting, it was discussed of looking for ways that the Long Range Finance Committee and the Sustainability Advisory Board work together to figure this out. So I don't want this to be considered a battle between two committees and our finance director, because it's really not that. Russ is acting in good faith. He's essentially had conversation of which, you know, the chair of the SAB was given direction to do is to reach out to Russ, have a conversation with him about it, and essentially at that meeting we basically said there's a common ground to be found here. Does it fit right now? We're not absolutely sure. Is there a path that it can still be looked at in the future? Absolutely. But I think because there's so much uncertainty in this, I'm comfortable letting it, you know, go back to committees and for those committees to work it out, because there is something that's really important there. Divestment is part of investment. And I think it's good that we all understand what that means. And I'm by far not prepared to tell you that today, but I think it's a significant step that we take that into account today. So so just want to step back. There's not a battle between committees going on. There's essentially a breakdown of communication that's taken place over the last couple of months in regards to what directions and how it's discussed. So, and I see committee chairs and staff still working together to make that happen.
Yes, that's my understanding. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little confused. I have nothing. I mean, by all means, we should have those synergies and we should put sustainability as part of everything we do. But we did, I guess, to address something that Councilman Peschel said. I mean, we did have that discussion at Long Range Finance. It was brought to us specifically from sustainability, and we had that discussion. City staff was diligent in bringing that discussion to us, and we voted unanimously as a group on what we wanted to do, what we wanted to recommend to council, having taking that into account. And I guess I'm just looking at the city org chart. I mean, that's the commissions don't report to each other; they report to the council. So I guess would it not be more appropriate for sustainability? I mean, again, we were happy in good faith. That entire group was. I shouldn't speak for them, but we all did consider and vote on this. We were happy to consider it, and I'm happy city staff brought it to us. But if sustainability wanted to recommend to the council a resolution to that effect for us to consider, that seems totally appropriate. But I guess I just want to make sure that the public understands that was brought to us and we did discuss it. We went through the channels.
Well, I just want to be clear that there were other members of the Long Range Finance Committee who said it was brought to them and presented, but there was not an actual review of SAB. But the fact remains that those SAB recommendations have not come before us. They are referenced in this memo from staff, but we don't have them. So I hear what you're saying, and I do believe that they will work these things out. But if we could, I guess, finish discussion and vote on the motion to lay this over. Councilmember Allison Osby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a little bit confused because obviously, seeing the notes, but wasn't a part of either one of the conversations. So, is it that SAB brought recommendations and Mr. Van Gompel seen them, correct?
Is that correct, Mr. Van Gompel?
Yes, the committee, myself and the committee did see the recommended resolution brought forward, and I'm not sure if it was passed by SAB or not.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, or what I've heard from Russ, because I was on long range finance, for probably 3 or 4 years. And if I remember correctly, during that time, something similar like this, if not this very same thing, I think came before. And the policy at that time, and came from Russ, is saying that the recommendation it's not that it's a bad recommendation, but it's not applicable to what we're currently doing right now, meaning, that the, because of wanting to keep, monies secure, I've never known the city to invest in individual securities, which most times, for somebody that has a portfolio, they're going to eliminate that out if that's something, that is important to them. But then, it also sounds like too, is that the recommendations or the suggestion was something also that we weren't doing, not just because of the safety of the public's money, but also because in doing so would be against municipal law here in Wisconsin. Is that correct, Russ?
That is correct. And that's the dilemma that we're in right now. And the policy basically calls out that we have to follow statutes in permissible investments. The investment within corporate stocks and bonds is not allowed under Wisconsin statute. So, Madam Mayor and City Council, the point from my recommendation with moving forward on the investment policy is, regardless of any type of action the Sustainability Advisory Board wants to make to City Council, we can't participate in that type of an investment. So it puts, you can make the statement of the intent of non-investing fossil fuels or companies that invest in fossil fuels. Doesn't really matter because we can't invest in them.
But there was as I understand it, there were some other recommendations that said we should actively pursue investments in renewable energies as the other piece of that. Now, since council has not seen these recommendations.
But it's the same, Madam Mayor, it's the same thing. We can't invest in those companies either. Those are also against the law. We can't invest in equities or corporate bonds. No, end of discussion. Doesn't matter what social purpose they may or may not achieve. We are prohibited by section 66.0603 from investing in those as well.
So tell me how Bayfield, Wisconsin was able to do this.
I don't know what Bayfield, Wisconsin did. I can tell you what we do, and we don't invest in corporate securities or equities because it's against the law.
And if City Council wanted to pass a resolution stating that you're not going to invest in it, it's a social statement. It's really outside of the investment policy. And I would encourage you to consider that if that's the direction that City Council wants to go. But I don't know it's in an appropriate tool or mechanism to have that in your investment policy.
Councilmember Allison Osby.
Sure. And, just, also too, whether, it's a mutual fund or, a gathering of like investment pools, a lot of times those are managed by money managers, and their goal is to have a certain profile. And obviously, the city is of conservative risk, but if it's a money manager, a third party money manager who is overseeing that, you have a loss of control. They're going to be doing that. And so and it's hard to say, I mean, the pool of investments might turn over very frequently, or it may turn over very infrequently. But again, we don't necessarily have control on that.
Okay, so Councilmember Mugerauer.
Thank you. And I know we're supposed to stay on topic of the laying over and not the discussing of the policy itself. But if SAB wants to bring that policy to council for council's consideration, that's appropriate. It's as Russ and Mark pointed out, excuse me, Mr. Van Gompel and Mr. Roloff pointed out, that's a social issue that has nothing to do with our investment policy, because we're not allowed to invest in those things anyways. So really, this is more about a social statement, which is fine. We spend a lot of time on social statements in this council. But it would be appropriate for SAB to send it to this council for its full consideration as a statement. But it has no implication or does not apply to our current investment policy. And Long Range Finance had a good discussion regarding the points that Mr. Roloff made and the points that Mr. Van Gompel made, that it doesn't apply here. So their suggestions, while well-intended, have nothing to do with and don't apply to our investment policy.
Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. I guess I don't disagree with what Mr. Councilmember Mugerauer is stating. The resolution that we passed states just that, is to send it to the council. But there was a clause in it that wanted the Long Range Finance Committee to look further into this. The issue at hand here is that Russ's memo came after we had already passed that resolution to send to the Long Range Finance Committee and the City Council. I completely understand what Mark and Russ are saying today, but I think the point is that the memo that was provided to the SAB was written before they made their decision about sending that information to Long Range Finance and the council. So, and I think that's part of the issue here is comes back to that communication issue of how do we rectify that one board says this and the other board says this, but they don't fully understanding why they don't make sense together. So
Yes, and this week we have a chair of the boards and commissions meetings, which this will be a topic on the agenda. City Manager Roloff, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I certainly bear some responsibility for this, and I want to explain. The SAB's directive is to advise the council and the city manager. This is an administrative function, the investment of city funds, done in compliance with an investment policy. The Long Range Finance Committee is not a mandated committee. It's an advisory committee, and the committee takes up financial issues. So this was discussed very briefly at the council meeting in December, and it was acknowledged that it was going to the Long Range Finance Committee. And, when that was discussed, it seemed that council understood that it was going to Long Range Finance. I don't think there's any clear policy about adjudicating issues of advisory committees that are administrative in nature. The SAB made the recommendation. I talked to Russ about it because the staff member, remember the staff liaison to the SAB is from the planning department. That person doesn't have any reporting responsibility to Mr. Van Gompel. So that person came to me and I referred it to Russ specifically because I knew that Long Range Finance was taking up this very issue. And it's like, well, the timing's good. They can consider this before they forward it to council. I didn't think it was appropriate for the council to adjudicate an administrative function. And I think the Long Range Finance Committee, I listened in to their deliberations, and they were very much, I think they gave credence to it. So I take responsibility for moving it the way it did. I have no concern about referring it back. I just think that Mr. Van Gompel and Ms. Davy talked about some things that I think they can bring back. But I don't think it necessarily will change our investment policy. But it can clarify maybe what SAB is hoping to do. With all due respect to the SAB, they don't have investment knowledge that we do share on a regular basis with long range finance. So the distinction that Mr. Van Gompel was making about commercial paper is neither equity nor a bond, but to track that would be extremely difficult. If that understanding is removed, then the policy is not inconsistent with the SAB's goals.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, it's more to the specific item on the table. What do you propose to do if we table this? I mean, will finance look at it again, or what's the?
So the purpose for the motion to lay it over is to allow for the long range finance and the SAB to reconnect with Mr. Van Gompel and to see what options there are for accommodating that. And if that is form over substance, my main concern here is, as we have other boards and commissions that have had different points of view on topics, we have received both of those recommendations. In this agenda item, we do not have both positions. So it was perhaps an administrative or clerical error, not accusing any kind of nefarious anything. This is a matter of, transparency and also good faith that when a board or commission makes a recommendation to council, that we see that. Yes.
Sort of follow up. So your hope is to have whatever recommendations coming from the SAB be presented at the same time as the recommendation coming from long range finance. Is that correct?
Yes, as they relate to investment policy, as they both relate to that. And perhaps, as Mr. Roloff pointed out, there was some kind of blip in the communication end of this. But just, it's in all fairness, we could come back and amend if they submitted that later, but they had the good faith that was going to be submitted to council along with this, and perhaps procedurally it just kind of fell apart in that transition.
Okay,
yes.
So if the wish is then to have the SAB have a recommendation presented at the same time as the investment policy, I have no problem with that, but I just want to be clear that it's not one commission's role to make recommendations to another commission that has to go to council. That's kind of out of the out of the chain of command. And I want to make clear as well that the reason we serve on specific commissions that I've been on long range finance for a few years. If there was a member there that had a problem with something specific and didn't say something or went back to a different committee, that's more of a governance issue that I think that we need to figure out. But again, we're not going to live or die with an investment policy. So I have no issue if we go back and bring these together, but I just want to be clear that this was considered and this was brought to us. So I don't want the public to think that we didn't look at this because it was brought to us.
Any other discussion? All right, well, let's take the roll on the motion to lay over until, let's see, what would the time frame be to allow both of those groups together.
Second meeting of February.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I would suggest just lay it over until the committee. It's going to end up being the second meeting in February because by the time the SAB and the long range finance, the timing may not work out perfectly.
Right.
So, until they have met and reconciled, we'll hang on to it and bring it back after it's reconciled.
Councilmember Ford.
I'm sorry, this is more of a point of, point of order, but so when you say reconcile, City Manager Roloff, I mean, my understanding from what I just said, there's going to be two separate policies. The long range finance is going to bring what we already approved, and whatever SAB decides to approve will come. Is there an expectation that we go back and change our policy?
I guess I'm going to put Mr. Van Gompel on the spot just a little bit. It sounded like maybe they could go back to SAB and SAB would amend their resolution. And if they amended their resolution, there might be some issues that we could deal with. And then Russ, I'm not sure if I accurately described your conversation with Ms. Davy.
Councilmember Peschel wanted to weigh in also.
I think what's important here is that there is some level of communication through representation. Say it's Mr. Van Gompel or the chair of the Long Range Finance Committee comes to the SAB or vice versa to discuss what didn't work good, why it wouldn't work, maybe specifically to the SAB, because I think there was an understanding there that there was an expectation that this did work if we forwarded it to them, and that it would be in good faith, taken, potentially be part of the investment policy. So I think there just needs to be that discussion of here's how this works, here's how this doesn't work between those two bodies.
All right, Councilmember Allison Osby, and then I do see that Lou Shear has joined us, and did I see that Jamie O'Brien came in the midst too?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to let folks know they're back with us. All right, Councilmember Allison Osby.
So, Madam Mayor, it sounds like there's two things going on. It sounds like there's a communication issue and also a good faith in hearing from SAB and making sure that council hears our recommendations. But what I'm also hearing, though, prior in the conversation was that there isn't anything necessarily about that's going to actually change the outcome of the investment policy that's put before us. So, because I hate to say it, but it is what it is. If the recommendations are things specifically, regarding fossil fuels, which was or the original conversation we had, and we can't do that because we already can't because it's state law, nor would it be prudent of funds to be put into risky investments, even if we can. So from that standpoint, if the investment policy isn't going to change, I'm not in favor of laying over. But with that being said, if there is something in which SAB would like to propose, which would be separate and sounds like that would be more appropriate and maybe more in line with the purpose of it, then I think that's a whole separate issue. So I just want to make clear, I'm more than happy to hear anything from our boards and commissions and SAB, but being that it's not going to change anything, I don't know why we wouldn't still vote on this evening.
All right, so let's call the roll on the motion to lay over to the second meeting in February.
Krause?
Aye.
Mugrower?
No.
Erickson?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Ford?
Aye.
Allison Osby?
No.
O'Meary?
Aye.
Carried 5-2.
All right, thank you. All right, if we could go back to the registered speakers, I believe Lou Shear was first and then Jamie O'Brien second.
Good evening. Yes, I'm hoping you can hear me. Lou Shear, the Affordable Housing Director of AdvoCap. I'm here to discuss or be available for any questions you may have on your agenda item 31, the conditional use permit for an adaptive reuse at 1332 Monroe Street.
Well, thank you for joining us, Lou. So you're just going to stand by until we get to that item then?
I am.
All right, very good. We're not quite there yet. I would go ahead and ask the O'Brien, it looks like you've got a group there. Who is speaking for Jamie?
So, this is Jamie. We're all masking, so it's hard to tell who's who, but this is Betsy and Bruce Kundy as well.
We're having a hard time hearing you. You're going to have to come closer to your mic.
Jamie O'Brien and the Kundys from Midtown Association.
And what are you speaking to, or is this a general statement?
We were waiting to see what the proposed zone change was for Jefferson Street. We saw it on the agenda for item number 40.
No, I think you must be mistaken. Mr. Roloff, that item is set for January 26th, correct?
You are correct. My report is that staff is drafting an ordinance based on our review. And as I had pledged back in the fall, when we have a draft, I will be happy to share it with the Midtown group. I certainly welcome their input. I don't have anything to share with you tonight, but the council had asked for a status report, and I asked staff, and they feel comfortable. I think it could come as early as the next meeting if it's ready. I want to have it earlier than just the deadline for the agenda. I think it's too important to just kind of put it in there. My point in my status report was we don't have anything imminent in terms of a potential request because we have no request from anybody about such a facility. So if we wait a couple more weeks to give a copy out to the residents for them to review and ask questions, I would certainly welcome that. But we don't have anything to share with you tonight, but as soon as we do, I will make sure you get it, and appreciate you hanging on so long to get that limited news, but appreciate that. And once we have something, right after council gets it, you'll get it.
Perfect. We did have one more question about the verbiage in there. It states that Trinity 1105 will be grandfathered. Seems like that no matter what happens, 1105 just keeps being grandfathered in every that we're going. So we just wanted to address that and see if we could get some clarification on why it's already grandfathered when we haven't really had those discussions yet.
I met with staff before they started drafting the ordinance, and we'll have that information explaining why we think they would be grandfathered in. You know, there are still issues that Trinity and the DOC need to work out for the benefit of that of you as the residents. We can't address those issues, but we've got some analysis that we can provide, and I'd be happy to provide that in advance as well, so you understand the logic behind what we're doing.
Okay. Do we have any input or be able to discuss that before it's finalized?
I think the short answer is no, but the reason I would prefer to give more time, if after you review it, you have any questions or concerns, I'm certainly willing to take a look at it, and as will council. This requires, an ordinance requires 2 readings, so that is 2 consecutive meetings before council votes on it. The purpose of that is so that an ordinance does have that full time to get vetted out. And certainly, if there's any issues, I'm certainly willing to suggest changes, and the council does all the time. Once we get it to you, I don't want to just give it to you the Friday before it's considered. I want you to have some time to it. And if the council doesn't act on it on the start on the 26th of January, council, I'm not that worried about it, and I'm happy to accommodate their concerns.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We
Okay,
appreciate
thank
that.
you very much.
Thank you for following up, and
You're
thank
welcome.
you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll jump into pending ordinance 21-25, approve zone change from central mixed use district with a planned development overlay CMUPD to central mixed use district CMU at 500-502 North Main. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Erickson and Krause. All right, discussion. Mr. Davis, do you want to give a quick summary of this zone change?
Yes, this is a follow-up to Plan Commission and Council direction from earlier in 2020 when, if you recall, the Boys and Girls Club put a sign up on the wall at the intersection of Merritt and Main Street with the permission of the property owner, and that sign has come down, so we're removing the zoning as we indicated we would do once the sign was removed.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? Please take the roll.
Krause,
Aye.
Kutzbauer,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Heschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Ospey,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, the next new ordinance, there will be no action taken. Ordinance 21-26, approved zone change from single-family residential 5 district SR 5 to single-family residential 5 district with a planned development overlay SR 5 PD at the southeast corner of Linden Oaks Drive and West 9th Avenue. This looks like a pretty interesting project. Mr. Davis, is this that pocket neighborhood that's being developed?
Yes, pocket neighborhood being proposed by Evergreen as a new type of housing arrangement. These would be single-family homes that would be privately owned by Evergreen, and it's kind of a neo-traditional type of development with porches on the front and encouragement of community social connectedness in their design.
Thank you very much. All right, our next resolution is 2127. Councilmember Mugrauer offered up an amendment to the City of Oshkosh fee schedule that we passed on December 8th for special event equipment fees. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Mugrauer,
Second.
Krause. All right, discussion. Yes, Mr. Mugrauer, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Figure since this one's something I brought forward, I should really start the discussion. Obviously, 2020 was not as anyone expected. We've said that. We've agreed to it in numerous ways and fashions, and it was especially hard for those special events, whether they're large or small. They didn't occur. We had a policy that provided for a let's just say a discounted equipment rate. And with 2020 being a wash, I feel it's appropriate that we help out those events that want to host here in 2021. It won't come to as any surprise to staff or many of my council colleagues that I'm not a fan of our charging for the equipment on our special events. So while I had inklings to ask for a 100% discount, I know that that's not reasonable to many of my colleagues, and I wouldn't want to put them in that position. So I felt it might be appropriate to offer 50% discount on the equipment charges only. It's not labor. We're still charging for labor. and to help those events that hopefully can get back to a sense of normalcy here in Event City. So that's the reason behind it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mugrauer, so much for all the extra effort that you went to seek staff input and research on this. Can you help us understand why we didn't have that conversation when we passed the fees in December on the 8th?
Timing wise is irrelevant. So I don't know what you're asking there or why not, but I felt it's appropriate to bring it forward now, and I'm doing so as I indicated back in December.
All right, and it looks like we have Councilmember Allison Osby and Councilmember Ford. Go ahead with your statements or concerns.
Sure. I guess my only question is, would staff have an example of what, a 50% reduction in the equipment fee equates to? Let's just say we're getting back up and running. We're optimistic that events are coming back. What exactly does that mean to the bottom line? That would be helpful.
And I believe, Mr. Van Gompel, you have the impact at $22,775 if we were due 50% FEMA rates.
Madam Mayor, that's assuming the activity level is the same as 2019, which would be kind of difficult to make that assumption. But in 2019 was the last year where we had a discount of 50%. And we collected 50%, and that was about $22,775. But that was at 2019 levels.
Councilmember Ford.
I had the same question.
Okay. And I guess my question is just, this proposes one option, and thank you again, Councilmember Mugrauer, for bringing this back as you said you would. This only shows one option of billing out at 50%. This year they would have been at, or I'm sorry, in 2020 they would have been at 75%, correct?
That's correct.
So is that another option for us to consider in addition to the 50%? Mr. Van Gompel?
Yeah, that's a correct assumption. In 2020, we were at 75. Again, this predates me, but at the time that council decided to go to the FEMA rates, they were scheduled to be at 100% in 2021. So the council at that time decided to implement the FEMA reimbursement rates over a 4-year period or 5-year period to get it to total.
Well, I think we all want to see special events come back. We passed a couple in the consent agenda. This would be one way in which to help encourage that. Do other council members wish to weigh in on this? All right. Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Krause.
Thank you. I would have no interest in raising it back up to 100%. I think the organizers are facing a tough 2021, people getting back out there already. I'd be fine keeping it at the 75, and I'd think about the 50% or somewhere in the middle. So I would at least be interested at 75. Thank you.
Mr. Van Gompel?
Just to be clear, the rates that City Council approved in December was at 100%. So you would have to take action to make it something other than 100%.
And isn't that what Mr. Mugrauer has introduced here?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So can we offer a friendly amendment, City Attorney? To 75?
You should do a formal amendment.
All right. Councilmember Crossley, would you like to make that motion?
Sure. I'd like to make an amendment to put the rate at 75% of FEMA rate for 2021.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. Any further discussion on the 75%? Councilmember Ford.
To Councilman Mugrauer, since you brought it up, do you believe 75% would still get at the intent here? Improvement?
I think so. I don't disagree with that sentiment. And I appreciate Deputy Mayor Krause, bringing that forward. It would put us in line with what 2020 should have been, and that's reasonable. So I won't, if it ends up at 75, I won't stand in its way and throw a fit. Let's put it that way.
Anyone else? Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. I believe I'm just I mean, there's a bigger picture that we should be looking at with this, and it's not just equipment fees. It's looking at, how is the special events policy, going to be affected going forward. We created a plan to transition into these fees at the FEMA rate over a certain amount of time. That was pretty much prior to what we now know as COVID-19 and the pandemic. So, and we understand how much that has affected our special events in our community. So, to me, I believe this brings in a greater conversation of how we look at how these fees are implemented as it relates to encouraging tourism and special events again in our community. And I believe that brings us back to, a level of looking at, a greater level of support at 50% at this point. Do I think 75% is good too? But I think it's a greater show of support, even though it's just equipment, to our community to bring it in at 50% of the FEMA rate. So I'm going to hold tight on 50%, and I'm not going to support the 75%.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take the roll on the amended, let's see, 27 amended at 75% and see where that goes. Please take the roll.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Krause.
If possible, could I withdraw my amendment of 75% and change it? Like I said earlier, I was fine either way, and I'd obviously like more development and more.
And I'll withdraw my second. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to have 50% FEMA rate for 2021.
Well, that takes it back to the original amendment, if I understand, or I'm sorry, the original resolution. So by removing the amendment that was offered, then we are back to as stated at 50%. Is that clear? Okay, that's what we're voting on. So please take the roll at 50%.
Krause.
Aye.
Mugrauer.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Allison Osby.
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Thank you all. All right. Thank you again to Mr. Van Gompel and Councilmember Mugrauer on that. 21-28, approve conditional use permit for an adaptive reuse at 1332 Monroe Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Erickson and Krause. All right, and discussion. I see we do still have Lou Shear with us. Thank you for your patience. Discussion on this item. Mr. Davis, are you still with us?
Absolutely.
Would you just summarize what this adaptive reuse would mean?
Yes, there's an existing structure on Monroe that's been used by the county, owned by the Housing Authority as a CBRF over the years. That use has ended, and Advocap is proposing to convert that into, I believe, 8 affordable housing units.
Very nice, very nice. And Lou Shearer, did you wish to say anything, or are you just there in case other council members have questions?
We are just very excited about this opportunity to be able to add affordable housing stock in the city of Oshkosh. And we know we have a very large waiting list for single persons looking for single bedroom units. These are relatively small units in the sense that the bedrooms are suitable for a twin bed and a nightstand and a dresser. There's a closet there. It does have a private living space. The kitchen has 2 burners and a microwave, but it does have a full bath in each unit. We are using these, as I said, as affordable housing, looking at rents at approximately $570 a month, which will include all utilities. And just anxious and happy to be able to put into this project back into good use.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Peschel.
Sure. My question, so in the existing, in the map there, or the picture that we have here, housing is going to take place in the southern building. Is that correct?
These units are all existing. These were all used. We have made no substantial changes to the use of the space at all, except we've added the sprinkler system to it.
Okay, so then the northern building that's along Custer Avenue there, that's gonna be the kitchen and the living room, right, or the large communal space that was pre-existing.
Yes, that was all pre-existing. At this time, there is no intended use for that space.
Okay, so it's an essentially undeveloped piece at this point.
Correct.
Okay.
There were some units in the basement that we are not going to be utilizing at all, but at some point we would look at the opportunity to put in up to 4 more units of single bedrooms that are fully accessible. But that's down the road, and we know we would certainly need to come to you again for that.
Okay. Thank you. You answered my questions.
And just a follow-up question, Ms. Shear, is are there laundry, is there shared laundry or laundry in the units here?
There's shared laundry on the first floor.
Okay.
And we will put a coin op in there.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions from council? All right, please take the roll.
Rousey.
Aye.
Woodrow.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Allison Ospey.
Aye.
O'Meary.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're on to council discussion and direction of city manager and future agenda items. Scheduling of public hearings on special assessments, future workshops, and implementing resolution 20-154. On the scheduling of public hearings on special assessments, what would you like from us, City Manager Roloff?
Thank you. The direction we're looking for is a few months ago, we held one large evening over at the convention center so that people could come and do their normal meeting with the city staff to go over their assessments. We currently don't have any public meetings in person. So do we wait until, say, we resume them? I was going to mention later, the meetings through February are going to remain online because we needed to do hearings for February. So those are already out. So we haven't done any of these. We can schedule these, but I really wanted to get council's perspective, preference on how you would like to conduct these special assessment hearings. And it does kind of tie in with number 34 as well. Because, what are we going to do once we have the hearings? We did the hearings last year, but we deferred everything. And as staff reports, we believe we need to move forward because it's going to create major cash flow issues for the city if we don't.
I thought personally the large hearing last year, it worked well. I thought the space was designed well for us and for the people to come in and have those discussions, and I thought it was safe. So I think doing something similar to what we did would be very reasonable for those people to come in and have those discussions.
Other council members' thoughts? Councilmember Peschel?
Sure.
And then Ford.
Sure. So help me. So that workshop or that hearing that we did, that was the one in August or September. Is that correct? Or October?
Yeah, I think you're getting warmer with October. James, do you have any recollection?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I didn't think it was as late as October. I was thinking it was more closer to August as Mr. Peschel started, but I could try and take a look back quick.
Okay. Yeah, but it's that one that you were thinking of, Mr. Peschel.
So my comments was that I didn't really feel that it was that widely attended, my recollection of that. And so I think that may have just been the timing of the year. That may have been the introduction of an enormous spread of COVID at that time in our community. And so I'm hesitant to schedule. I'm more comfortable scheduling hearings now for special assessments. But I guess in regards to direction and that, I don't necessarily know where to tell. Are you looking for a specific time frame, or are you looking for us to say, yes, go ahead and do it in kind of a normal setting, or do you want us to give you direction in doing it in the previous setting? So
this seems like more of an administrative decision.
Well, we can do them all at once. If it could bring a lot of people out, but I think Mr. Peschel's observation was correct. We did do that, and we did it all in one night, and it was not well attended. And I don't know how well attended it would be. I think staff's done a really good job of doing a lot of advanced work. So people, normally their questions have more to do with the project itself. And since the projects were well on their way, we have been working with them already. These will be done prior to the work getting done. We're going to be awarding bids in the coming weeks on these projects. So we can certainly schedule them together and perhaps do them in March, depending on where we are with the meeting schedules by March.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes, I mean, I agree that we can do it in person with the proper protocols, but I just want to make sure that we advertise the ways in which individuals can discuss with staff either via the phone or virtually, but don't get comfortable going to an in-person thing. I know we already do a pretty good job of that, so I'm not too worried. Just want to make sure that we do emphasize that there's other ways to get that information. And I guess on the second item, I agree with the staff recommendation that we don't extend the waiver of special assessments due to the cash flow issues.
And I would also agree with that.
And that was, if you recall, when the council discussed that the last time, I brought up that technically no action is needed on the council. You already gave us that direction, but we knew with everything going on, would you want us to continue that? We'll begin processing them unless council were to take action to the opposite. I recall Councilmember Allison Osby asked about the impact, and it's 8+ million. So I know that's a wake up call. Well, we were concerned when we had 4 million in uncollected assessments. This is double that. So I had a feeling I'd know the answer, but we wanted to report it back to you. So we'll plan to schedule the hearings, and we think successfully we can do it in one night, and we'll do that. I just wanted to make sure your comfort level.
Just a clarifying question. The work that Councilmember Mugrauer and Long Range Finance and Ms. Van Gompel did to recommend for council to reduce that interest rate on special assessments, would those folks be able to avail themselves of that lower interest rate that were for the period that we had suspended or delayed?
Council could do that. It would really come down to what you ultimately wanted to make the effective date. And I think Long Range Finance has been talking about that. I'm going to defer to Mr. Van Gompel and Councilors Mugrauer and Ford, because I was not privy to that discussion, other than that they were talking about it.
City Manager and Madam Mayor, certainly would defer to Councilmember Mugrauer or Ford, but I was planning on bringing at the next City Council meeting the recommendation from Long Range Finance that we would adjust our interest rates. I can tell City Council that we did that based on our cost of borrowing funds, and Long Range Finance looked at the last, I think it was 4 years of debt issuance costs and what our cost of money is. And Long Range Finance is recommending that we adjust down the interest rate on special assessments, basically from 6% to 4%, but that would be an agenda item for next City Council meeting.
All right. Do you have what you need on that one?
I believe so. Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. And then we have the joint meeting with Oshkosh Area School Board scheduled finally for January 20th at 6 p.m. And what is the forum for that, Mr. Roloff?
Well, the forum is a joint discussion between the two bodies. The last meeting the council had given me when this was discussed was 2 items. One was school busing, which council and the school board have actually taken care of in the interim. The other one was a police school liaison program. And the other one that after hearing different things, kind of the discussion, Madam Mayor, we had this morning at the Community Sounding Board, certainly discussing the need for us to be engaged with the school district on the schools, making sure that our staff from a planning and a public safety, traffic, all those standpoints, and what the mayor and I represented to Superintendent Cartwright and Board Chair Herzog was that we stand ready to assist them, consulting with them to make sure that whatever's done is done well. And I think we just having that discussion, even if it's that short of a discussion, it's important that we work together. I think the public's going to expect it, and then we have a vested interest in terms of how it's going to develop the respective neighborhoods surrounding the schools and within the boundaries of those schools. And I think we provide some valuable input.
Absolutely. And I'm very pleased that Superintendent Cartwright was open to that very first conversation when I first met her, before referendum even escaped anybody's lips. So I'm very glad that the school district is willing to cooperate and work with planning staff and others. It is truly important. But my question about forum was not content. It was, would this be virtual? Would this be hybrid? Would this be in person? I know that the school district or the school board's meeting in person now, as I understand it.
Yes. I don't want to put Mr. Peschel on the spot, but I wish I had the answer. I know that was discussed, I believe, Mr. Peschel, I don't know if it was talked with the board, because the board is meeting in person now.
Yeah, I'm trying to look back in my emails about the scheduling of it. And there's a side of me that thinks that it's going to be virtual because of
That was my
the space, the amount of people that we're bringing in to the space where we meet. It would not accommodate a larger meeting of both bodies and selected staff. So,
Okay.
I think he's confirming my gut feeling as well.
All right.
That was I think that was what I saw in the email.
All right. Very good then. Is everybody available for that? Councilmember Allison Osby, do you have something that may interfere?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I will not be available on the 20th. I am having major surgery that day, so I will be out of commission for a little while.
All right, thanks for letting us know. All right, let's move on then to report of council liaison for boards and commissions. If folks have anything since our last one, I don't even know if there have been any boards and commissions that have met except for Plan Commission. Mr. Ford.
Yeah, the most exciting thing at Plan Commission was what we did see. We had an item there to sell a hotel to COTS, a nonprofit that does transitional housing, and that was pulled because the seller decided to go in a different direction. And speaking only for myself, I was disappointed that specific deal fell through because we as a council all made clear to the city manager that we're committed to addressing the issue of people experiencing homelessness in our community. Transitional housing needs to be part of that continuum of care. And I know that Councilwoman Erickson is much wiser than I am on this topic. So if she wouldn't mind weighing in, I would love that.
Sure, thank you. Happy to. Yeah, so I think related to this topic, we have some really great nonprofits and partners in the city who are part of the continuum of care, which is a community-wide commitment to ending homelessness. And so all of these agencies and advocates kind of provide pieces of this housing continuum, which are all these different options that we need to have available for folks meeting certain needs. So everything from emergency shelter, so like what Day by Day, Father Carr's, Christine Ann, what they provide, to transitional housing for people who need that kind of step up out of shelter, which is what COTS is looking to provide. And then all the way up to affordable and market rate rent and home ownership. So for those of us who work in kind of the housing and shelter world, there's no one size fits all answer. We need to have all of these ranges of options to meet all the different needs that we have for housing in the community. So from what I've learned over the years, Oshkosh, we have some major gaps in this continuum, and especially in this transitional piece, transitional housing. So I think this is something that we have to continue to work on, keep talking about and taking action. City Manager Roloff, do you have anything else you want to add that I missed, or anything you see that kind of the city's role in this?
Well, it was really interesting. Once the notice had gone out before it was pulled on the COTS facility, there was clearly some misunderstanding that the COTS facility was something comparable to Day by Day for very acute type of homeless needs. And COTS is totally different. And I think we need to have that discussion. The continuum, the word about continuum, we need to talk about, because Day by Day will never be successful unless we create a continuum that allows their guests to move on to other more stable housing alternatives, and ultimately to independent housing. And that's something that I heard loud and clear from council members who have talked to me about this issue. It was really interesting. COTS up in Appleton has been supported a great deal by Oshkosh Corporation. And the mayor and I had a chance to chat with Wilson Jones, and he is so enthusiastic. And I believe that Oshkosh Corporation will support this as much as they've supported COTS up in Appleton. I can't quote them on that, but clearly the understanding of the value of a facility such as COTS and that it's absolutely needed in this continuum of care for our homeless community, so that folks can, for lack of a better term, graduate to the next level, with the ultimate goal of being having some independent housing for them. I think the work that AdvoCap talked about earlier is another one of those. That's another element to that continuum of care, to helping get folks to the next level, less, more affordable, stable, but not overly elaborate. That's going to hit their pocketbook so negatively that they could easily spin back into homelessness. So those are kind of the issues, and I appreciate Council Members Ford and Erickson bringing the issue back.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just add on that in 2016, when I first came on council, I was contacted by a treatment facility here in the city who, opened my eyes to something, and that is that as a result of some of our housing codes and availability or lack thereof, they were suggesting that we as a city were building the recovery community outside of the city in places like Neenah and Oconomowoc, which is great for them. But for folks who are struggling with some of these challenges here in Oshkosh, if we don't have folks who are in the recovery community here to model for them or to mentor, then we definitely create yet another gap. So it's important for us to think of the recovery community as an asset to this community, and roofs over their heads is part of that asset. So I'm excited about this. I hope that they will find another location here.
And we're going to continue to reach out and let them know. And I think this discussion, what's great about this discussion, this is something that the folks at COTS are going to hear, that the council is extremely supportive, even though this location didn't work out, that the concept of it. But I think we got a little work to do to educate the community in terms of what this is, so that people understand that COTS should be very welcomed in the community, and we need to help them as much as we can. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Council Members Ford and Erickson.
Deputy Mayor Krause, and then Councilmember Peschel.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we had our Traffic Parking Advisory Board meeting, and just a couple things to pass along. The rapid flashing light beacons were just installed on the roundabout at Washburn and 9th, and they were donated. The equipment was donated by the Winnebago Aging and Disability Resource Center. So I want to thank them, and the city took on the cost of the installation of that. So it was a great partnership on that. So the more of that going on in the city, the better. And then the one other item is we have one current vacancy on the traffic and parking, meets at 4 p.m. on the second Tuesday of every month. It's the perfect board if you have a grumpy uncle or if you're a grumpy resident and you want to have a seat at the table to voice your grievances.
Are you saying that traffic is not fun?
It is fun. That's what I'm saying. If there's a person that thinks that the ideas being passed along aren't good ones, this is the place to be. Well, thank you.
Yes, and I will say that we've got another pleasant round of applications over the month of December for some of these open spots. So we're actually getting close to being refueled in all of those active seats, but there's still also a number of alternate positions that allow one to participate in the discussion, perhaps not vote unless there's somebody, not in attendance. So thanks for bringing that up. And then Councilmember Ford, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Peschel.
Sure, thank you. So the only meeting that I've been to this month that's met is the SAB, which we spent some time talking about that today already. But the majority of that meeting that we had this month was about goal setting for 2021, what we want to work on, and who's going to do the work in relation to the Sustainability Advisory Board and its goals. So The one thing that I wanted to state back to the discussion about homelessness, or more specifically transitional housing that we were discussing, was not so much what took place recently, but that in the 20 years that I've been working in the nonprofit community in Oshkosh, I've never heard a leader as high up as Mark Roloff ever say the words continuum of care. And that's a positive for that, to see a leader who is so prominent in our community and can take those steps forward in creating change, to understand that we have to understand what the continuum of care is in our community in order to understand what the gaps are and how to move forward from those gaps, and to prioritize what we need to help solve this issue in our community. So Mark, thank you for saying the words continuum of care. Thank you.
Well, you are welcome, and I guess it proves the adage that you can teach an old dog new tricks. So thank you very much.
Okay, any other council member Mugarauer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And actually, I don't have my own to report on, but I have a question, and I'm wondering if maybe actually yourself and Ms. Erickson, Councilmember Erickson, attended the library board meeting back in December, and I apologize for putting you on the spot. It came to me just as part of this discussion, and if you're not prepared, we can have a discussion next time. But you guys attended the library board meeting, I think, in early December or late November, early December. I forget the time frame, maybe. And I wondered if either one of you might be willing to share what the status is of the library from that discussion, maybe that you either heard or participated in. For the community, the library is not open much. In fact, it's minimal is an overstatement in my own personal opinion. And the having access to that facility is vital to this community. And I was wondering if you guys had anything you'd be willing to share.
Yes, and I will admit that I logged in later into the meeting, so I only caught a portion of that particular agenda item. So I would ask Councilmember Erickson, because she was there for the full thing, and we did a debrief afterwards. But if you would share, Councilmember Erickson, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah. So I attended, spoke during the public comment, and just talked about the need that we have in the community for some sort of place for people to go during the day during COVID. There's not many options for folks, especially in the winter. So since this would require action from the board that was not on their agenda, they have been discussing it since then, and they are planning, as far as I've heard since the meeting in December, they're planning to bring it up at their January meeting, which I believe is January 28th. So they had some discussion. There was interest from board members in having a broader discussion about what their reopening looks like and the phases that they're taking. So I think more to come end of the month from them, but nothing solid yet.
Thanks for jogging our memory on that. It's been a little while back.
Yeah.
Okay, city manager announcements and statements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a handful of things in your agenda packet that I just want to go over. The cooperative purchase of the emergency generator for Station 15, that was technically an unbudgeted item, but we did have sufficient reserves. We looked at repairing that generator, but it was beyond repair. And when it's an emergency generator at the location where our emergency operations center is, it was kind of a big deal. So I want to thank Mr. Van Gompel and Chief Stanley for, being patient with staff as we, found finance found where we could use some of our capital contingency, but also facilities, working with them as well. So really appreciate their work on that. The professional services agreement for Donahue and Kale Engineering are basic agreements that we put in place. So we've got those for each capital project year. It's 2021. We're rocking towards getting our capital projects done for the year. USI is our insurance consultant. They're the ones who assist us in getting our bids and quotes for health insurance. We do not use a broker. USI works for us, and this is our annual agreement with them. We work very closely with them. They were a great deal responsible for helping us create the Three Waves Clinic, because they were the consultants for the school district and the county. We hadn't been using them. We've added them as our consultant, and we've been very pleased and want to continue that relationship. An unusual one, number 40, it's a cost of $74,000, but it's a net cost of $0. The council will recall that we entered into an agreement with the League Mutual Insurance Company for workers' comp. They have an arrangement with this group called Rebound for recovery from accidents. And within 2 weeks of us cutting this check to Rebound, we will get this exact same amount rebated to us by League Insurance. So it's a net cost of $0, but because of the amount, I'm required to report it to council. But the idea is to get our people back on duty as quick as possible. They use a sports medicine approach to getting people back. So when you see somebody coming back in the NFL from ACL, it's because they use these types of people. And this is that same logic approach that they'll use. So, Deb, you may want to look these folks up. So, so I've got those. Outstanding issues, we really did talk about the biggest one with Ms. O'Brien's question. I appreciated that. So the transitional housing. So we're drafting a code amendment and we'll get going on that. I'm hoping we can go. I think staff feels that we can do something on the 26th, but I want to make sure it's good. And I do want to give the Midtown neighborhood an opportunity to take a look at it. And I'm certainly open to ideas. And I think we got to be open-minded about it. There's not a rush to do this because we don't have any pending things. So if we need to take and stretch this out for a couple meetings, it is not the end of the world at all. COVID-19 update. I see Chief Stanley Shield there, so I know the chief is there. It's all the discussion is about vaccines, and we're working. Obviously, we are talking very closely with county health as they get things available. Chief, can you give a little update? As much as we can tell you, it's not a lot at this point, but certainly Chief can give just a brief update.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were fortunate enough to benefit last week from the Winnebago County Public Health Department having vaccines for our firefighters. It's kind of a short notice program. We got almost 50% of our people through already. Had a catch-up day at Aurora Health. And what's more exciting too about the vaccines is we're moving into the 1B category so that our police officers will be able to get vaccinated as well. So I know Chief Smith is working with Mr. Guerin over at Public Health to accomplish that.
If I could are there any questions about COVID? I just want to go back to outstanding issues just real quick, but are there any questions on COVID? As you may have heard, because of the noticing requirements for public hearings, we extended the virtual meetings through February because we were already noticing people for meetings in February, and I felt it was appropriate that we give them, tell them exactly what the expectations were they going to be virtual or not. And, certainly at the next meeting, we can discuss that. I told council early on, I was going to include you. You delegated it to me, but at the same time, I respect the fact that these are your council meetings. We're just the staff to you. And we certainly want to do that. From a public health standpoint, the numbers are down. We believe that the numbers are down a little bit because of, reporting slowdowns because people just weren't getting tested during the holidays. So we'll see where the numbers go after everybody went and visited mom and dad and grandma and grandpa over the holidays. So I don't think the numbers are truly there yet. So we'll see what happens. Are there
Mr.
any
Roll,
questions?
there was
Yeah,
a
please.
question, actually, I'm sorry, I was muted, that came in through a social media post that was regarding whether or not the city of Oshkosh had different COVID-19 rules. And it was in relation to an event, I believe an employer's party that was scheduled at the convention center that was supposed to be like 250 people. Can you respond to that?
I can neither confirm nor deny that there's such an event going on, but I will say that any event at the convention center is not governed by any authority we have from a public health standpoint. Those have been prohibited. We don't have the authority by state law, nor contractually do we have the ability with our agreement with the hotel. So if it is true, we don't have the authority. And if it's not true, then it's not true. I'm aware that they have had some events. They have had weddings. And I know the hotel has talked to people renting the facility about proper social distancing. And then I see photos of people whipping it up and dancing. We don't have the authority from a legal standpoint to stop that. The discussions that you've had with special events, if they qualify as a special event, council has authority. In a building that's for its intended purpose, we don't have the ability to regulate a business that is operating within legal parameters, and contractually, we don't have the ability to limit that. We can close the convention center, but we can't limit it once it's open.
So do you want to just give the public a clear explanation of what the city's relationship is with the convention center?
It is a contractual relationship in which we have delegated the authority to manage and operate the convention center to the Best Western Premier Hotel. So they manage that facility within all the rules that are required by whatever applicable laws. We don't have the ability to limit them other than current existing, say, fire code. The capacity of the building is roughly 700. If there were 800 people in that building, the fire chief could go over there from a fire code standpoint. But if there's 699, they can have 699 people in there because the only code that would apply would be a fire code. We don't have, I believe the agreement states, and I don't want to put the city attorney on the spot too much, but we've had this discussion because this question has been asked, and we don't have necessarily the ability to contractually prevent them from having an event with, for example, 250 people. With that said, the next thing I'm going to talk about is state of the city. We're not doing our 250 people event because of all the uncertainty, but that's our choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you're okay. Just jump back real quick to outstanding issues. Deputy Mayor Krause and I were discussing my goals, which will be discussed at the next meeting. My intent is that I will add my goals to the list of outstanding issues so that you'll have a regular way to track how we're doing on those things. And homelessness, because of the conversation we had tonight, I'll add it after you officially give me the goal, but I'm unofficially working on it because we've discussed it so much. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
So State of the City, March 22nd, 2021 will be offered virtually for those who are interested in attending. And will we make that link available under the, let's see, I think it's called public meeting notices on our website, or where would that be? Would it be in the hot items?
Well, technically it's not going to be, everything will be pre-taped. Everything will be pre-taped.
Okay.
So there won't be a public notice. So thanks for asking. Yeah. So, but we will be seeking out each of you for your participation in this. And staff's working very creatively. A couple of council members have already said, hey, I heard about this, heard about that. Some communities were doing virtual states of the city pre-COVID. So we're looking at different ideas. The award stuff, we still want to do. And I think that's where we're going to, the council members have been our presenters like the Academy Awards. We still want to do that, but it'll obviously be done differently. But we'll work on, pairing you off or having you do it individually, because I think the public appreciates the recognition that we give to our groups. And I know SAB, so Bob, if you want to, this is reminding me, if you want to take it back to the SAB, I know you've done some awards or recognitions. We can do those. That's not a problem. So anything that we've done at the in-person state of the city, we can replicate in a virtual mode. It'll just all be pre-recorded. So we'll probably look better doing it anyway. We'll have we can do a second take for you and things like that.
All right, very good.
So we'll be in touch.
All right. I'm just going to add one thing that I should have mentioned at council member statements, and that is we did not have a Parks Advisory Board meeting, but I did speak with Mr. Maurer. For those of you who are anxiously awaiting Roe Park ice rink opening because Mother Nature has not been cooperating with us, my granddaughter and I included have been anxiously waiting for that. So we've been out on Miller's Bay ice skating, but please stay off the ice until it is open. And if you see the sign has been knocked over, please pay attention that it's not to be used. We want to have fun on the ice, but we don't want to wreck the liner, that very expensive liner underneath. So hopefully after Friday's warm up to 35, I'm told that it's going to plunge into the cooler temps. So let's keep our fingers crossed about Roe Park ice rink. It's going to be super fantastic winter wonderland.
Cold weather, yay.
Yes. All right.
That's all. I'm good, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
All right. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Mugrauer and Erickson, and please take the roll.
Krause,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Heschel,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Allison Osby,
Aye.
O'Mary,
Aye.
carried 7. We
We
are
are
adjourned.
adjourned. Good night, everybody.